So let's look at the 7 stages of setback, definitions, and what the stages suggest for a character's mastery orientation. I want to look at the accumulation of setbacks first and then get into the 7 stages. All right, so now let's look at an accumulation of Paul Sheldon's setbacks. There were multiple, but I only want to focus on just the 3 main ones that are kind of obvious. So the first one is his missed opportunity to understand the needs of his reading audience. Making a decision to end the Misery series without really consulting the reading audience, right? Or not taking into consideration the reports in terms of, data and statistics and the praise received for each of his books, not really studying it. See, what happens with writers and authors, they write for a publisher, they submit their work, they are paid for their work, right? Then they market and promote the work, but they don't really study the data like the publisher does. The publisher is looking at the numbers by state, by geography, by particular demographics, gender, income levels, everything. They're looking at the data. And Paul Sheldon was so preoccupied with the idea that he didn't want to make writing the Misery series his life, that the fact that he wrote 8 novels is his life. And it has become the life of many of the readers. So to me, he didn't understand the needs of his reading audience. Does he have the right to shut down anything he wants to shut down as a writer? Sure, of course. As an author? Sure, of course. But he also has to take the consequences that comes with that, right? Of course, he didn't think that Annie as a reading audience would be so extreme, right? If we just look at Annie as a symbolic individual who represents an amalgam of a reading audience that prefers to continue reading Paul Sheldon's works, then we have to consider also the fact that they might be upset with the ending or shutting down of that book unless there was something that could extend it. So if we look at the J.K. Rowling, the Harry Potter series, what if she just had the series but didn't have the movies? People would be upset. The reading audience, the customer base would be upset. But it helped that many of the books, part of the series, were turned into movies. And then they were turned into little high school plays. And then they were turned into a whole theme park. Other types of things. And then we can now see many of those movies on regular television, cable TV. It helped that the whole series was packaged and sort of distributed in different ways. And I do believe that if Rowling decided to extend the Harry Potter series for one more book, people would buy it. They would line up and they will buy it. And then of course film studios would do their best to then option to make the movie. But that's understanding the needs of a reading audience. These were people who were saying, the customer base were people who were saying that the Harry Potter series got kids reading. It made a difference. It got kids reading. And so that's the reading audience. So I think that his missed opportunity was in not taking his audience seriously. And he's so preoccupied with wanting to become a serious writer, which is the next point, that he didn't take his reading audience seriously. So his missed opportunity to title that work that was untitled and give it purpose, meaning that he knows what the purpose of it is, especially considering that he wants to be considered as a serious writer. And so the fact that he had that work untitled, and maybe sometimes you don't always know the title of your work. I usually do. But maybe sometimes you have titles running through your head and you're not quite sure which one to choose. So let's give him the benefit of the doubt. But to not know the purpose of the work and have Annie tell him what she thinks the work is about is something that is kind of alarming, considering that he wants to pursue this as a particular field. So that means he shouldn't have created his next book as a book to change the course of his career. He should have continued to write another misery book while working on the serious piece and then submitting that along with his manuscript, maybe to another publisher. I don't know. And I don't know if that's really allowed, but at least he would have taken some time, because 6 weeks is not enough to determine if the work is going to be considered a serious work, worthy of publication and promoting, and worthy of shutting down a previously successful, financially workable product that already has an audience, that already has a customer base, and that customer base is both domestic and international and global. And so that's why I say he doesn't understand the business side of writing, authoring, and promoting the book for the publisher. And then the last point, Paul Sheldon's missed opportunity to learn about Annie Wilkes. It took too long for him to learn about Annie Wilkes. Of course, he was set back in terms of his physical issues, damage to his body and everything, and just sort of lulled into a sense, Annie Wilkes lulling him into a sense of safety and protection and on the road to recovery. For all he knew, Paul Sheldon, for all he knew, Annie Wilkes was genuine, was the right person to help him, according to what she said about herself. But there were opportunities that he could have learned about Annie just in having a conversation with her, especially a person who wants to talk about his books, right? That's the best time to engage the person, even if you don't want to talk about your books, and even if you have made up your mind to no longer care about your books. The fact that there was someone there who wanted to talk about it, and then that would have given you some insight into her thinking, versus the little times that the brief moments she goes into some little monologue, some little mini narrative about herself, and it's just a single puzzle piece, but you don't have the full puzzle. And it wasn't until almost to the end of the book, to the end of the film, that he really is learning about Annie. And it really wasn't until she shot Buster that he actually took her seriously. So those are the three main points in terms of Paul Sheldon's setbacks. Now let's look at an accumulation of Annie Wilkes' setbacks. And so 3 main points again. And so I believe Annie Wilkes' missed opportunity to overcome personal misery, that it shouldn't have to take someone coming along to sort of show her the way out of misery, or it shouldn't have to take books on misery and on the main character, Misery Chastain, to show her out of misery. Annie, they could be a catalyst. The books can be a jumping off point, but at some point you're going to have to decide, I'm going to have to address my depression. I'm going to have to address my mental health issues. I'm going to have to address my misery, because she went to the extreme in keeping Paul Sheldon trapped and not letting him go, not wanting to let him go. And that is not a good sign of a person who has worked through his or her problems. And so I feel like that's a missed opportunity for her, because she just refused to overcome her personal misery. The only thing that she did was sit up in bed, watch TV, eat Cheetos, and drink Coca-Cola. make her a meal, maybe make her a meal, go into town and go get some groceries, things like that, and then play with her pig Misery. And even the pig could be a source of happiness and comfort and therapeutic um, their catharsis for her, right? It did sort of keep her going, but after a while, the real Annie really came through. The second point I want to make is her missed opportunity to usher Paul Sheldon to full recovery. That she decided to nurse him back to health, not the reverse. And so once she set that goal, she should have seen that goal all the way through to the end. No, she wanted to become an editor. She wanted to become a writer. She wanted to become a pseudo teacher. She wanted to become a taskmaster, a warden. She was trying to do everything but be a nurse to nurse him to full recovery. And when she takes the sledgehammer and hits his ankles, he was already on his way to full recovery with those legs. She just made the situation worse. And so that lets me know that she's not a real nurse in her heart, in her passion. She might have been a licensed nurse. She might have done all of the education requirements, right? But she's not a nurse in her heart, in her passion, in passion, because no one who has worked that hard and cares so much about being a nurse, being a doctor, being a teacher, being whatever it is going to just trash it and not do well by it. When you see, I understand, and I'm probably going to get some flack for this, but I understand that moms can be depressed and can suffer from postpartum depression, but I'm not really talking about these moms. I'm talking about that mom who throws her kids off the balcony, who drives her kids into the river and lets them drown, right? Or who sets their kids afire, or who pimps their kids out to a person, even if they are under the influence of drugs. That's not a person who wanted to be a mother, and that's not a person who embraced it eventually as motherhood. That is a person who just got pregnant. And again, I'm not talking about the postpartum depression mothers. I don't know that. I haven't experienced that personally, but I do have a sense about people just in general who do certain things and they call it, oh, it was this, it was that, I wasn't in my right mind. It takes some visualization to make a decision like that, to wonder if it would work, to think about how to walk to the balcony and throw your kid off the balcony. So I feel like she didn't really have passion for the job. She might have been forced to take a job like that. Someone in her family might have, like a father or something, might have told her she got to do something, and she found something to do. It's like the people. Not every cop is committed to police violence, right? There are, accidental issues with police, and then there are people who actually join the force and put on a badge just to use police violence against someone and make it race-based. They don't have passion for the job. And they are making the people who care about law enforcement look bad, right? But because they all wear the blue uniform, it's hard to discern which one is good, which one is bad. The problem is, though, you have to begin thinking about whether or not this person is suitable and fit for the job. Not someone who just looked at a job announcement and decided, okay, I'm just going to apply to become a cop, and not understanding the full scope of that decision making. And then now they are on the streets and they are having to confront the people on the streets, and many of their personality traits are coming out and they didn't expect it, and now they have committed a deed, and now they're going to be charged, and it's just a number of things. But that just tells you is that because you got many people who are very tired and burnt out in their careers, but they don't commit a crime as a cop. It's because they have passion for the job. They may not always like the job, but but they're not going to do anything that's going to garner an ethics investigation or a criminal investigation. So I don't think she really had a sort of full passion for the job, because if you're strangling babies, that means that you are not willing to undergo many of the challenges with the job. When you strangle the baby, you end your inconvenience. See, there's a lot of excitement to take the job, but you're not willing to endure the job. And so if you're strangling babies and hurting people on the maternity ward wing, that means that you really didn't have passion for that job, and you don't know what it means to set a goal, endure a goal, and complete a goal. So she didn't usher him to full recovery. And then the last point is Annie Wilkes's missed opportunity to choose a career that best fits her personality and passion. I teach college students, college English. I do not have a passion for secondary education. That's K through 12. The little kids love me. They love, coming up to me. I think it's so strange, but they love me. But I don't have the patience to deal with kids. Now, if I was teaching at that level, it would be high school, and it would be junior, senior year, because it's much closer to them going to college, and I can help them with transition. But then I would have to deal with the parents. I would have to deal with the administrative staff. I don't have that patience for that. I don't have the passion. However, I do have the passion for what I teach and the administrators, and I don't have to deal with parents, because the student is considered an adult in a college classroom. And sure, there's some office politics, and sometimes it can be just really silly or whatever. But I kind of understand the system. When I was in college, I was on student government. I sat on a faculty committee. I mean, it's a lot of things that I really care about at that level, and I teach at the community college level. Now, it might be arguable whether or not I have the passion to teach at the university level. I don't have a PhD, so I can't teach at that level. But I know where I have passion for, and I know, and my personality really fits at the community college level, and that may be a limit for me. And that's what I mean. That may not have been. Annie didn't have patience for babies. So why was she on a maternity ward? Because she wanted the honor connected to moving up. But she never really critically thought about, do I really care about babies? Do I care about this? Maybe I need to be a nurse in another department. She might have still should have been a nurse, but she should have been a nurse somewhere else. And so she didn't choose a career that best fits her personality and passion. Think about those people who are what's a good working retail. And when you are working with the public, you need to smile and be engaging. But you have some of the meanest people working in public. That is not the career that best fits your personality and your passion. And so that's something I thought about with Annie. And then the last one, accumulation of Sheriff Buster's setbacks. So I did want to include him in the discussion in terms of assessing this character's setbacks. And so there are 3 main points. Sheriff Buster's missed opportunity to extend his learning process. So one thing I will give him credit for, that he was very good about being proactive in terms of learning about Paul Sheldon, what he wrote, what he thought about, even being triggered by Annie's presence, and then thinking about that statement that he wrote from one of the books, and then seeing that process all the way through to the library and reading up on old news clippings, and then just considering that Annie might have Paul Sheldon, right? The problem that I feel that he did not extend his learning process was in learning about Annie. He was so hasty to leave that library with that statement, there's a justice higher than that of man, and I will be judged by him. He was so eager to leave that he didn't think to himself, okay, what about Annie? What about Annie Wilkes? Because it doesn't seem like he had been engaging Annie Wilkes on a regular basis, right, as sheriff. He didn't do a house by house search of Paul Sheldon. And so he was aware of Annie Wilkes' farm, but it didn't seem like he was concerned about trying to find out about Annie, because if he had stayed in the library and gotten more news clippings about Annie, especially the fact that he was looking at a news clipping about her court case on the courthouse steps, that should have prompted him to say, let me do a little bit more research to find out about her so I know what type of person she is, in the same way that he was willing to read all of those novels of Paul Sheldon's Misery series to learn about how he thought. And so that's why I feel like he missed his opportunity, because then it resulted in death. Had he done that, he would have really learned about Annie, and then he would have been more inclined to bring somebody along for backup, right? Why would you, knowing that everyone usually has a gun or shotgun in that type of area of Colorado. So knowing that she would have something like that, it should have prompted him to think to himself, I better bring some backup. The next point, Sheriff Buster's missed opportunity to close out gaps in his professional knowledge base. So the way he moves seems to be at the very beginning when he's trying to find Paul Sheldon, seems to be kind of standard. He's using the helicopter. He located the, he saw that the tree was kind of bent, and it wasn't the weight of the snow, it was likely the car crash, so which was true. And then the second helicopter ride, he was able to see the car because the snow had melted. And then he called the state troopers, and then the reporters came out, and then he sort of assessed the car while everyone else was talking, and noticed that the car had been opened, likely by a crowbar. And there was just and then he took calls, he fielded calls from probably newspapers, and then of course the agent, and then he extended his process to learn about Paul Sheldon. So it seems like he had a pretty good professional knowledge base in terms of just standard ways of doing things. But some situations are kind of unique, and you have to be careful not to rely too much on your standard way of doing things, because then it will cloud your judgment. He's going to a house without bringing any backup. He's walking about the house without checking the whole house. He's still on the first floor, so to speak, right? And basically those houses in that area tend to have a basement or an attic, and he didn't check to ask her about her basement. So he's walking about the house, trying to be in a way of authority, but is really not. And then he turns around and comes back in once he hears something, and that leads to him being shot. And so there's some gaps in his professional knowledge base as sheriff, and I don't know if they are elected or appointed, and sometimes we can be distracted with the idea that he has some years on him, which we always believe equates to wisdom. But once there was no stakeout. He could have left and got to a safer place, as I noted in a previous frame. He could have left and got to a separate place. Maybe drove his car somewhere, had someone with him, and to stake out the house at night, right? Not let on that he's anywhere in the area, but just sort of stake it out, and then he would know beyond a shadow of a doubt. He's going at this by himself, and it's likely because he wants to be the person to solve the problem and get the sort of honor of solving the problem, because it looks bad as a sheriff that you still haven't found this person who is lost. And so then there's this drive to try to hurry up and find the person so you can repair your reputation. But when you are trying to do that, you sort of throw off the shackles of standards and ways of doing things and push forward your own personal agenda so that you could look better to your public, right? So I feel like there was some gaps in his professional knowledge base. And then the last point, Sheriff Buster's missed opportunity to utilize the full power of his office. So yes, he goes to the lodge and then he goes to the general store, and he's just, you know, getting information, gathering intel, so to speak, or whatever. But he has all these men in the town, and he doesn't utilize the full power of his office. He deputizes his wife, but not the men. Not the men to go and search for Paul Sheldon, who is supposed to be this noted, well-known, respected author who is lost in his town. And the woman, she may have, his wife, Regina, may have some skills of her own. She likely can take care of herself. But in a situation like this, where they are trying to find someone who is lost and missing, and he's going back and forth to talk to the lodge manager and the general store manager, and he doesn't take out a badge or like the little star thing and deputize them because he just found out, or he is suspicious, especially when he talks to the general store manager and the manager says that Annie Wilkes has been coming to the store for typing paper. Okay, that should have been right there. There should have been a time that he could utilize the full power of his office and deputize that man. And also the lodge manager and any other man to then go and search for Paul Sheldon. So I thought that was kind of interesting. So these are the accumulation of setbacks for Paul Sheldon, Annie Wilkes, and Sheriff Buster. So let's recap the 7 stages of setback. So this, the following represent the 7 stages of setback explored within Overcoming Setback, 5 Keys for Entering and Exiting Correction. And so we're going to apply. And so the 7 stages are the stages I came up with, and the book is going to be available August 2021. And it is missed opportunity, punishment, pain, correction, recovery, restoration, and advance. So missed opportunity is sort of like that missed instruction, warning, direction. Someone is telling you something and you say, oh, I'm good, you know, as if you don't need to hear that instruction. And the way you actually advance in life is by obeying an instruction. So that missed opportunity, and you said it yourself that, oh, I had an opportunity to do something and I didn't do it. Oh, I remember my mother telling me to do something and I didn't do it. Oh, I should have done this, but I should have listened to my first mind. That's what the missed opportunity basically suggests. I always like to use the academic analogy. Say the missed opportunity was a math class, and everyone understands that in a math class you have to show all of your work. And whatever problem it is, you have to show all of your work. And so sometimes we get into these math classes and we don't want to show all of our work, and we just want to put the answer down on a piece of paper, or we just want to show part of it and still get to the answer. When the teacher taught you the long way of showing all your work, and she wants to see, or he wants to see, you demonstrate that knowledge, right? So you decide not to do it. You decide not to do it on homework, on tests, and then of course the final exam. Well, she fails you, or he fails you, right? And you try to make a case that, well, I don't see why I needed to show my work on everything. Well, it's no different than a language. When you are learning a language, you have to show all your work on your homework. You don't write it in English, you write it in that language. When you are called upon in the classroom, you don't say it in English, you say it in that language, because there must be a demonstration of knowledge of what you basically learned. So then you fail the course, and then you have to retake it because certain math courses are required for graduation. So then while you are taking that course, retaking that course, you take other courses that are also required, which makes it kind of inconvenient for you that you now have to retake a course you failed. So then that's sort of the punishment for that you have to retake the course, right? The system is punishing you. You could decide to quit school, but eventually that situation is going to come back around again. Some jobs require you to take a math course or to demonstrate knowledge of certain math concepts, right, depending upon the job. So then the pain is oftentimes the feeling of inconvenience, having to take the other courses that already demand a lot of your time with the course that you have to take over. And then of course the pain is having to do everything that you were supposed to do in the previous course, which leads to correction. So whatever you failed to learn in the previous course, you're going to have to now learn, and which is going to be harder. That's why it's better to do what you need to do in previous courses. They could be life courses, they could be job courses. Say for instance, you're supposed to stay at a job and come to work on time, right? But you come when you want to, and then you are written up, and so many write-ups could lead to suspension and then later a firing. Once you get to another job, well, it could be harder for you to get another job because of that firing. So correction is essentially, in this particular analogy, in the math analogy, is showing all your work line by line. I remember a teacher, we were in the faculty break area and room, and she was grading her math papers, her student papers. And I noticed, and she had her red pen, and I noticed that she was checking every line. Now we can have upwards of 100 plus students a semester, and that could be, depending on how many classes you are teaching, how many students are in each class, right? That's a lot of work. Not only did she have to prepare the lessons and teach the lessons and meet with students or whatever, but when she was checking the homework, she was checking it line by line. There were certain lines she would mark a X, and then there were certain lines she would mark a check mark. And so she will be the great corrector, in a sense, in this particular analogy. But whatever you didn't do in the previous course, you're now going to have to do, which is going to take a lot of time, because you don't know which teacher you're going to get and which teacher who is going to require you to go above and beyond. And so then once you do that, that leads to recovery. Recovery is recovering from your bad thinking about a particular situation. Your bad thinking was, I don't need to show all of my work. Look, I got the answer right here. I got the answer. I mean, I worked out the problem on my other sheet of paper. I can show that to you. But she instructed you to show all of your work on the test paper, not on some other paper. You could have scratch paper, but you needed to show all of your work on the test paper. So recovering from bad thinking is recovering from the idea that I can do it my way and still get to the destination. But the teacher's telling you that may be true, but I want you to do it in this way, right? And then restoration is sort of like that mentoring. It's mentorship. The person encouraging you on a better path, mentoring you, telling you the reason why it's important to do it in this standard way. Sure, if you got your own class and you were teaching your own class after graduating or something like that years later, you may decide to do it your own way, but you'll find out that when you teach a class yourself, you will find out that you are likely to do it the very same way that you were taught, and you are likely to expect your students to do it exactly the same way you were taught. So a lot of times people want to skip out and skip through the process, not understanding that they're going to get somebody just like them later. And it can be on a job, it can be as a teacher, it can be in any capacity, and you're going to find yourself talking like a teacher in the same way your teacher was talking to you. So restoration is that mentoring. And then advance is that forward and continuous movement that you want to get out of setback. And again, you have to go through all of these stages in order to get to advance. But you need to understand that some people live to survive setback. But if you think about the visual of the runner, the track runner, running around on the track, and then it gets to the finish line and doesn't cross. Okay, if he stays at the finish line, he is surviving his setback. But if he crosses the finish line, he is overcoming his setback. And so that's what you want to do. And then advance, you want to continue to stay in an advanced forward and continuous movement so that you don't always repeat your setback. If you think about the person who is being sort of let out of prison, right? Why is it that they continually go back and forth into prison? Because they are missing something. They're not allowing them they have missed the opportunity to stay out of it, and then the punishment is to send them back, and the pain is to try to figure out why they keep doing it, and they're not being corrected, meaning that they're not receiving instruction. So that leads to no recovery, no restoration, and no advance. And they think just because they got out that that's a success in their life, but you got to stay out. And so these are the 7 stages of setback, and now we're going to apply them to the film. So to miss something is to fail to notice, hear, or understand something that was crucial for you to know. What is Annie Wilkes' missed opportunity? What is Paul Sheldon's missed opportunity? What is Sheriff Buster's missed opportunity? What is the writer-director's missed opportunity? So Annie Wilkes' missed opportunity, I feel, is just in not taking Paul into full recovery. Or let's say, for instance, we leave that off for a minute and we look at the fact that she could have called the ambulance, right? Her missed opportunity really in that regard is friendship, long-term friendship. That had she stayed true to her word, when the roads open up, I'm going to call your agent, call the police, call the ambulance, call your daughter. Then she would have been a woman of her word. And then when Paul Sheldon came to town to write another book, he would have looked Annie up, and then she would have had a long-term friendship. The way she does it, she traps him and keeps him there, isolates him, which makes him want to run and escape even more. So I feel like that's her missed opportunity. Paul Sheldon's missed opportunity is in basically not titling his work, but it has a lot to do with ending the Misery series, that it just doesn't make economic, financial sense for him to end something that is working and productive. And to get into another thing and have to build a whole new base and character, integrity and trust, when he could have done both at the same time. He could have used Misery like you do with a full-time job. You keep the job, you keep the cash flow coming in, and then he could have been working on the new book just quietly and pushing it along the way, right? Sheriff Buster's missed opportunity, I feel, is in not deputizing another person in the office. That may be too easy to think about, but just not staying abreast of new ways of handling certain incidents that come along, right? If you have been the sheriff of a particular town for so long, you get used to just regular day-to-day things, but not maybe taking a continuing education course to deal with kidnappings or something. I don't know, serial killers or just anything like that, right? That I feel like that's his missed opportunity. And then the writer-director's missed opportunity is in maybe not letting Paul walk, you know. His hands do the walking for him in terms of typing, but there's a lot we don't know, you know. Um, we get sort of bits and pieces of Paul Sheldon through Annie, through her biography of him. But I thought it was interesting just overall that Paul never got up and walked. And I don't know if that's really significant or if we should care about that, but it is something that I thought about. The purpose of punishment is to address negative and or bad behavior. To punish is to inflict a penalty, discipline, and correction. So what is Annie Wilkes's punishment? What is Paul Sheldon's punishment? What is Sheriff Buster's punishment? And how does the writer-director use punishment? So Annie Wilkes's punishment is likely the fact that she dies in the end, right? That she is not going to have access to the book, the Misery Returns. That she's not going to sort of live out the rest of her misery through Paul Sheldon's book, right? That she never got to find out who Misery Chastain chose. That's punishment for her. Going to jail or killing her off really is not punishment. That's just obvious, right? If she was caught, she would go to jail, go to court, things like that. And then Paul having to kill her in the end was just obvious because he has to escape. He got to get out of there. And it's basically that if he doesn't kill her, she's going to kill him. So those are sort of obvious. But the true punishment is not letting Annie Wilkes live with her misery. That's what I feel like that is a punishment for her. Paul Sheldon's punishment is doing something other than what the reading audience requires, right? Jumping the gun, thinking that he could change genres, shift his career, and that it would be okay and that everyone would accept him. He was delusional. Even if he didn't cross Annie's path, there was going to be serious issues with him taking that route. Now, of course, the book at the end of the film is praised and received, but I think it's in large part because of his experiences with Annie and that likely gaining notoriety. But if it had just gone straight and he didn't crash his car and he went back to New York and then he pushed that book, he would have gotten serious blowback from his reading audience, and then that would have been punishment. Sheriff Buster's punishment is just essentially trying to go at this thing by himself without really any backup, and so he's literally killed off. He's punished in the end, meaning that he really didn't have to be punished in terms of being killed by Annie or Annie killing him if he had just asked for help, right? When you think about Virginia sitting at his desk trying to clean up his desk, and he comes in and he's frustrated with her and telling her, don't worry about it, don't touch it. It's his way of not asking for help and going in and getting that statement, but then just basically not telling her anything. When he finds out that Annie has been buying the paper, he doesn't tell anybody that he's going out there to the house to ask any questions under a suspicion. So his punishment is just acting alone and not asking for help, not deputizing the men, not telling his wife where he's going. And then how does the writer-director use punishment? Ultimately, the greatest punishment that he uses is with the sledgehammer and having Annie walk out the narrative of hobbling or demonstrate the narrative of hobbling by actually committing the act. And that is the punishment that is felt really throughout the whole film, even though it is in that one area of the film. That Annie has a problem. She's not really punishing him to keep him from leaving. She's punishing him really because he thought that he could leave the Misery series and everything would be good. And so she's the person who is standing for all of the reading audience who want that book, and she's essentially taking that sledgehammer and punishing him with that, because who do you think you are to stop the Misery series when we've been living for this Misery series? You're on your 8th book. There are more books to go, right? And so, and we could tell that is true because he wrote another book, Misery's Return. So Annie was not completely off base. So I think that's how the writer-director uses punishment. The pain reminds you that you have done something wrong, you have made the wrong move, and you need to undergo a process to let the pain ride itself out until the fever breaks. So what is Annie Wilkes's pain? What is Paul Sheldon's pain? What is Sheriff Buster's pain? How does the writer-director use pain? So Annie Wilkes's pain is the fact that the untitled book is a distraction for her, and that she has pain because she feels like there's no nobility in it, in the same way there is nobility in Misery Chastain. And then when she finally reads Misery Chastain's the new book in the series, the last book in the series, pain comes over her that her misery has to end, right? I mean, the Misery Chastain character is ending. Paul Sheldon is ending the book, but it's also like her misery has to end. And when you're used to something, you feel entitled to it. So Annie feels entitled to pain. I mean, to her misery. She doesn't see it as pain for her. It's breathing for her. Misery, right? Her setback is breathing for her. And so now you're saying I'm going to have to end my misery and start confronting my misery and anything that has contributed to it as manifested and maybe in pain, and even look at my setback. I likely had to lose my license because I was strangling babies. And now you want me to address all of that? That's why people tend to take drugs or drink themselves to sleep, because they don't want to confront the pain. And so when she reads that Misery Chastain has died through childbirth, it's almost like she was dying. You know, Annie Wilkes was dying. And so she felt the pain of that. What is Paul Sheldon's pain? Well, the fact that he had to burn his book. But, you know, that's kind of arguable, because even though he's psychologically undone by it, I don't see any real emotions with it. There was some reluctance to burn the book, but he goes into just a blank face about it. I don't see any crying. And that could be one of the missed opportunities, too, that the director fails to show Paul Sheldon manifest his pain other than yelling, right? No crying at all. And then Sheriff Buster's pain is essentially the pain connected to not being able to solve the problem. Something, he's gone wrong somewhere. That's why I feel like he goes and gets those novels and reads them, because he's gone wrong somewhere. He's made the wrong move. He's made the wrong assumptions or something like that. And so his pain was just not being able, he's the sheriff. And he can't solve this problem, right? And so that's what I feel like his pain was. And then how does the writer-director use pain? And so maybe if we look at Virginia is not noticeably in pain, but it is kind of frustrating when you want to help and a person doesn't want to receive your help, her husband. But the way the writer-director uses pain is maybe the viewing audience sort of reading the newspaper clippings with Paul Sheldon and noticing that many people were dying when um, Annie was near them, her father, the fellow student. There was also a painful moment when the parents lose their babies, right? As we were looking at those newspaper clippings, right? There's the pain of Buster dying that Virginia is going to have to now hold in her heart that her husband died the way he died, right? So pain is used in different ways. You just have to interpret it a little differently, how the writer director uses it. The purpose of correction is to get you back on the original path set for you or you set for yourself. Correction is defined as the returning of something to its former place or condition. So was Annie Wilkes corrected? Was Paul Sheldon corrected? Was Sheriff Buster corrected? How does the writer director use correction? So Annie Wilkes is never really corrected, in a sense that she set the goal to help Paul Sheldon recover, but she only made the situation worse. So she didn't learn from her mistakes. She was all preoccupied with that untitled book, and she dropped the soup on his bed, and she's saying, "Look at what you made me do." But she didn't self-correct and say, "Okay, he wrote the book. That's his book. Hopefully he will continue to write more misery series, but I can't be mad at him for that. I'm just going to do what I said I'm going to do. I'm just going to nurse him back to recovery." She was never corrected. If anything, she was trying to kill him at the end. So Annie Wilkes was never corrected. Was Paul Sheldon corrected? So, I mean, through Annie Wilkes, in terms of, okay, you're trying to shut down this book, this series. No, I'm going to get you to rewrite, write Misery's Return and extend the series. So she was corrected, right? She corrected him in that regard. But when he says at the beginning of the film, "I never meant it to become my life," and that he wants to write more serious work and be something worth proud of, I interpret that as him not really understanding his audience, and then at the end, his reading audience, and then at the very end of the movie, when he talks to his agent that he learned something from that situation, I feel like he was corrected, or that Annie helped him. I feel like he was corrected in that way. So that now, sure, he says at the end, "I wrote it for me. I'm not writing it for awards and recognition." And maybe that's what he started out doing with Misery, and then he took it too far. Regardless, I feel like he might have been a kind of person like Buster, who didn't feel like he needed any help. And then in the end, he felt like he got the help that he needed, right? So Paul Sheldon, yeah, I feel like he was corrected, because anytime you start using the word learned or helped or something like that, I feel like you receive some kind of correction. And so he's back on the path, and I feel like he will on some level consider his reading audience. Was Sheriff Buster corrected? Well, you could say that when he initially addressed trying to find Paul Sheldon, he did it from a place of, previous understanding, his own standards and ways of doing things. But he was willing to be corrected in that, and buying a bag of Paul Sheldon's books and learning about Paul Sheldon and learning about what he wrote and how he wrote, right? In other words, he sort of did what Annie should have done in terms of learning from the situation. So I do feel like he was corrected. And then how does the writer director use correction? Well, The writer-director uses correction in very sort of extreme ways, especially with Annie and having Paul Sheldon burn the book and using the sledgehammer and making Paul rewrite or write an extension of the series, right? I think he uses correction, but it's sort of biased in the sense that it's whatever Annie wants him to do, not necessarily what Paul Sheldon wants him to do. To recover is to return to a state of health, mind, and strength. Without soundness of mind, it would be difficult to accomplish or achieve anything. So did Annie Wilkes recover? Did Paul Sheldon recover? Did Sheriff Buster recover? How does the writer-director recover characters or use recovery? So Annie Wilkes, of course, does not recover because and recovery, remember, is recovering from a bad way of thinking about a particular situation. Annie Wilkes does not recover in the end, of course, because she dies, right? Paul Sheldon ends up killing her, but she doesn't recover the soundness of mind of leading him to recovery, leading Paul Sheldon to recovery and being just preoccupied with that. She doesn't keep her word. She doesn't bring in the ambulance or the sheriff, alert the sheriff, anything like that. So she prevents recovery, which affects her own recovery, right? Or affects her ability to recover on her own. Her soundness of mind is, or lack of soundness of mind is just unpacked throughout the rest of the film until we see the very end. And all is well with the world and things are resolved. Did Paul Sheldon recover? Sure, he recovered. Not fully recovered in terms of physically because he has to walk with a cane, right? I feel like he was on his way to recovery before she used that sledgehammer. And so now he will always have a limp. He will always have something as a reminder. You can recover in terms of saying, I'm still going to go forth with my career. After all, he did write a whole new book. He ended up burning 2 books, right? The one where she made him burn it, and then the one where he burned Misery's Return. So now, did he recover in terms of extending the Misery series or whatever? No, he meant what he said, that he didn't want to make it his life. And so in some ways, the Annie Wilkes situation kind of helped him to make a different turn, because it's a bad thing when you have extreme actors, people who take your work so seriously to the point that they need to kidnap you and try to kill you when you decide you want to let it go. Did Sheriff Buster recover? Not necessarily, because he dies in the end. He had a warning before he went to the house when the wife was trying to help him and he refused help, meaning that's kind of like a inherent implicit warning in the film. Ask for help. I'm here to help you. Let me help you. And so he goes about the town trying to ask questions and find Paul Sheldon without help. So he doesn't recover because he still had the attitude that I can go at this alone and I'm going to do it by myself and I'm going to resolve this problem myself, which led to his death. Then how does the writer-director recover characters or use recovery? So with Paul Sheldon, he wanted to become a serious writer. And he started out that goal to try to become a serious writer. And that goal was thwarted by his hastiness to leave too early, and then ended up crashing his car, and then being subjected to sort of like a mini kidnapping or something like that, being trapped in Annie's house. But in the end, the writer-director still recovers. That main goal that he had was to write seriously, and we see the title of the new book as something that is much more serious. So yes, he does recover or use recovery for Paul Sheldon. Restoration requires mentorship, and mentorship is predicated on learning from someone who has walked out the process. So how does Annie Wilkes restore herself? How does Paul Sheldon restore himself? Did the writer-director restore Annie Wilkes? Did the writer-director restore Paul Sheldon? How does the writer-director use restoration? So Annie Wilkes restores herself and bringing back her own misery, right? That you're going to write this new book, but you're going to have to end this previous untitled book. I mean, you don't even have a title to it anyway, so it's not really worth anything. You don't even know what it's about because you're asking me what it's about, so it's really not worth anything. So I got to restore my misery. And I'm going to use you to do it. I'm keeping my misery. So you're going to write Misery's Return, and that's how she sort of restores herself. Paul Sheldon restores himself. How does he restore himself? Mainly, Paul Sheldon, strangely enough, takes some mentorship from Annie Wilkes. The first chapter that he writes of Misery's Return is not worthy of anything, according to Annie Wilkes. That is beneath him. And then she goes into that whole spiel about the Rocket Man and everything. And so through her guidance, he writes a better draft. And then she continues to read all of his other drafts and gives him feedback. So, because remember, Annie is the reader. Annie knows the book. She has read the book. She read them from cover to cover over and over again. And so she knows the storyline. So when he was trying to come up with just something to give to Annie to shut her up, she immediately realized, no, this is not what happened. You're not going to be able to fool me into believing that this happened. No, you're going to have to rewrite a whole new draft, right? Because I know the Misery series and I know what you wrote and what you write, and you're going to have to do better. So she sort of works like a taskmaster, a mentor, that you need to have some integrity. This is beneath you. This first draft you're giving me is beneath you. You know better than this, right? I know you know better than this because I've read all of your other books. So did the writer-director restore Annie Wilkes? I mean, in a sense of having Paul write Misery's Return because she wants her misery. So Paul is used as a tool to bring back her misery by writing Misery's Return. Did the writer-director restore Paul Sheldon? Sure. Back to his life? Yeah. Of course. Now through Annie, of course, as well, but back to his life. He didn't die in the end, right? And he returned. This time he put a title on his work. This time he knew what the work was about, versus in the beginning of the film, he didn't title it and he didn't know what it was about. So sure, yeah, he's restored in that way. And then how does the writer-director use restoration? You know, I think in terms of not knowing what you need to know to carry out a task, and then searching for what you need to know to carry out a task is a form of restoration or mentorship. So you see Buster operating on previous ways of solving problems and then shifting from those previous ways to now trying to figure out the best way to solve the missing Paul Sheldon problem by now reading about Paul Sheldon. So I think in that way I think the writer-director uses restoration. And then advance. To advance is to move forward in a purposeful way and make or cause progress. Advancing is a forward and continuous movement. So did Annie Wilkes advance? Did Paul Sheldon advance? Did Sheriff Buster advance? Does the writer-director advance any other character? So Annie Wilkes' misery advances, strangely enough, when she forces him to rewrite that book, write Misery's Return. Her misery returns, and when she said before that that misery made her happy, she was actually happy. Now we know that is going backwards, to embrace your misery, to embrace your setback. But for Annie, that was advancing for her because it made her happy. So her misery, her setback made her happy, which advances her in her own way. Did Paul Sheldon advance? So, well, he stayed alive, you know. He put on the face necessary, the actor's face necessary to keep himself alive. And he stays alive all the way throughout the film to the very end, because very much because of that actor's face. Now, he had to essentially put on misery. He had to essentially embrace his setback with a smile. Annie was really smiling, but he had to do it, like I said about the baby, the parent sticking out his tongue with the baby to see if the baby is going to mimic the parent, right? He had to put on that baby's face to mimic what the parent looks like. So Annie smiles, Paul Sheldon smiles. Annie frowns a little bit, Paul Sheldon frowns a little bit, or whatever, and then he tries to catch himself so that he can still continue to extend his life. So yes, I think in that way he advances. Did Sheriff Buster advance? Sure. I think he didn't advance towards, he advanced towards the end of the movie, but he's shot, he's killed. But the fact that he was willing to learn something different and move about in a purposeful way in terms of understanding something different represents his advance. And then, does the writer director advance any other character? I don't think Virginia advances. I don't think the lodge manager advances. I don't think the general store manager advances. I really don't think any other character advances. Plus, we don't get too much engagement with those other characters, with the secondary characters, to know if they advance. But it's not like we see the general manager coming out the store and saying to the sheriff, let me help you with this. Anything I can do, I'm available. You can deputize me or something like that. We got to find Paul Sheldon, right? They're not sort of moving forward in a purposeful way. They stay where they are. They stay where they assigned. The lodge manager is assigned to the lodge. The general store manager is assigned to the general store. You don't see them leaving those places, right, to come out and try to offer some kind of help, right? So no, I don't think the writer director advances any other character. So these are the 7 stages of setback that we apply to the film. All right, like, subscribe, and visit. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell for more discussions. You can visit my YouTube channel for further film analysis. It's Favorites Film Analysis as the title of the channel. You can always send me an email and ask me a question, reginayfavorites@yahoo.com. My Overcoming Setback 5 Keys for Entering and Exiting Correction book will become available around October 2021. I'm still doing some editing. The book does not focus on film analyses, but I use the content that I created for the book to support my my perceptions of setback used as a theme in select films. So when the book becomes available, I will send out a notification video, audio. Thank you very much for visiting the channel.